Hey, good morning. Here's a moment in white history. James A. Garfield was born in 1831, and by the 1870s, he was running for President of the United States of America. In his only major campaign speech, he said this to 50,000 people in New York. Gentlemen, ideas have outlived men. Ideas outlive all human things. And all that we mean today by our meeting as veterans and as comrades is to stand as a sacred guard about the truth for which we fought. We have seen white men betray the flag and fight to kill the Union, but in all that long and dreary war, you never saw a traitor under a black skin. In all that period and terror and distress, no Union soldier was ever betrayed by any black man anywhere. And as long as we live, we'll stand by these black allies of ours. We will stand by them until the equal sunlight of liberty shall shine upon every man, black or white, in the Union. Citizens of New York, thank you for this magnificent demonstration. Thank you. Thank you. And in 1880, James A. Garfield became our 20th President of the United States of America. But what he didn't know at that time, he had a Stan who believed that he should be a part of his cabinet. His name was Charles Guiteau, and by today's standard, we'd say he was somewhere on the spectrum. In 1875, his family claimed that he was insane and had him committed, but he escaped. That's when his mania became violent, and he said that he was called by God to kill the president and make things right. Now, during this time, the president didn't have a personal security team around him. He was free to roam as he saw fit, even though 16 years earlier, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at the Ford Theater. But people assumed that, well, that happened because a war was on and nobody would kill another president. And so they published the president's itinerary every day. And wouldn't you know it, good old Charlie Boy was reading the newspaper and found out exactly where Garfield was going to be. So on July 2nd, 1881, as he was headed off to vacation, he stopped by his alma mater to give a speech. He had both his sons with him. The Secretary of State, Blaine, was with him, as well as the Secretary of Defense, Robert Todd Lincoln, was with him. And as they were talking, Charles Guiteau walked up behind the president and shot him twice, once in the arm and once in his back. He tried to run away, but he was captured, and when they asked him, "Why'd you shoot the president?" he said, "Because I'm a stalwart, and I want Arthur for president." And as the angry mob of white people grew around him, they did what they always do. They called for his lynching. Now, the stalwarts were a group of Republicans who wanted Grant for president instead of Garfield. Think of them as the Republicans who wanted Bush for president instead of Gore. And while the angry crowd was taking care of Guiteau, Garfield was taken to an upper room where doctors could better examine his wounds, which happened to be the worst thing to happen to Garfield since being shot. See, these doctors were examining his wounds with unwashed hands and unwashed utensils. They were sticking their filthy fingers into his bullet wounds, trying to find the bullet, and when they stuck their longest finger in as far as it could go and couldn't feel anything, they start sticking in sticks and rods and canes to see if they could find the bullet. And all they did was successfully introduce an infection to his body. The medical team of doctors were led by Garfield's childhood friend, Dr. Willard Bliss, whose hard work and determination ultimately led to the death of the president. You see, Dr. Bliss was one of those people who didn't believe in washing your hands. And every time he inspected the president's wounds, he did so with filthy hands and filthy utensils. He prescribed morphine and wine for his pain, gave the man fatty foods, saying that he was just a little weak. Give him some prime rib. That ought to perk him up just right. And every day the president grew worse. So much so, Alexander Graham Bell was brought in. See, he had just developed a device that could detect metal within the body, and he wanted to use it to find the bullet within the president. So Bell waved his device over the body of the president until he was alerted to the sound of metal. He told doctors, "Here, cut here, that's where you'll find the bullet." And with unwashed hands and unwashed knives, they cut into the body of the president to find no bullet. Bell's machine had picked up on the metal springs in the mattress beneath the body of the president. And that's how the first metal detector was invented, which was proof that his device worked. But Dr. Bliss only allowed Bell to examine one half of the president's body. Bell would have found the bullet had he examined the other half, but Bliss was like, no, you can only do it once and we're not doing it again. No! So for the next 10 weeks, the president lay in bed having good days and bad days. And as summer wore on, it got hotter and hotter in his quarters. So naval engineers created a crude version of an air conditioner by stuffing 6 tons of ice in a container and blowing the cool air over his body. And on September 19th, 1881, James A. Garfield died of sepsis. And most historians and medical professionals agree that if they had never stuck their filthy, unwashed hands into the man's wounds, he would have lived. Even Charles Guiteau said, yeah, I shot him, but it was the incompetence and ignorance of Dr. Bliss that killed him. And that's how we got the term ignorance is bliss. Even though Garfield fought for the rights of African Americans, he didn't do that for Native Americans. He hated them. He wanted to eradicate them and wipe them off the face of the earth. And that's how James Garfield, the air conditioner, the metal detector, and the phrase ignorance is bliss became a part of white history and indigenous history.